Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's probably a good idea to take a look at the very first ever Galarian Darmanitan card. Seems a little bit rude if we don't take a look at the very first ever Galarian Darmanitan card. Although from now on, I'm just going to call it Darmanitan. It's weird how most of the Galarian forms got new names, and this one didn't. Hey ho. What we see starting off with is 140 HP, which is pretty good for a stage 1. It's above stuff like Naganadel, which is generally about as high as we go. We've got a retreat cost of 3, which is in that sweet spot where you can't have Air Balloon for free retreat or buff padding for extra HP, so that kind of sucks. And being an ice Pokemon in the game means that though you are a water Pokemon, you do come through with a metal weakness. Is it a bad weakness? No. You see, yes, Zacian is probably the best card in the entire game right now, but they also have a single attack, which hits you for just 230. That's easily enough to get a KO. Maybe if Zacian finds some metal friends in the future, we'll be a little bit more worried. We've got, well, your water type. Being a water type is awesome. It means you are hitting weakness on welder decks, which are basically among the very best decks in the game at the moment. It means that you've got Frostmoth to accelerate as much energy as you like, as long as you're on the bench. It means you've got Quagsire to move your energy round, if that's what you're into, or Crasher Wake to give you a little bit of extra consistency. This is very, very nice indeed. And it's got some pretty nice attacks. Our translations here are a mixture of the lovely David Hockman and the lovely Antoine Boulet, two of our very favourite people. And starting off, 1 water, 2 colourless energy, 80 damage, plus 10 to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. You're doing damage and you're spreading. I'm alright with this. This seems alright to me. Now, at this point, there might be a couple of you, those of you that watch a lot of my videos, might be on the verge of accusing me of hypocrisy. Because you see, I had a look at Ice-Q the other day, and Ice-Q for 1 water, 2 colourless energy does 70 damage. And then 10 to each of your opponent's bench. It's the same attack, except you're doing an extra 10 base. First of all, the extra 10 damage is good. If 10 damage wasn't good, Vitality Band wouldn't have been a decent card, and it is. Or Plus Power would never seen any play, but it did. Or Crobat G. You can see where I'm going with this. However, the biggest issue here is that Ice-Q only had a single attack. That was all we could rely on. Whereas Galarian Darmanitan has this as the opener, but has the opportunity to add an extra energy and then pull off a really big attack afterwards. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm sorry, but that makes a fairly gigantic difference. So no, I don't think this is just Ice-Q, but it does 10 more damage and all of a sudden I'm changing my entire opinion about it. It's a nice little attack that does a decent amount of damage, spreads a little bit round, and obviously, right, if you're going to be really dedicating to spreading the damage around, then you're probably going to want to be playing around with stuff like Roxy as a draw card, discarding stuff like Coughing or Wheezing to do a little bit of extra damage, while using Roxy as a draw card. You discard up to 2 Pokemon from your hand, you draw 3 for each you discard, but if Coughing or Wheezing is one of them, you get to do 1 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. You can play this as a bit of a spread deck, but really the first attack softens up. The second attack is where we start doing the real damage. 2 water, 2 colourless, crushed ice head, 170 damage. This Pokemon cannot use this attack during your next turn. Fine. We've already mentioned Zacian in this video. Zacian's got an attack that you can't use next turn, and anyone want to argue Zacian's unplayable right now? I would imagine you probably don't. It's not a huge deal. Get to the bench, get active again, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. The thing is, 170 damage is great. If you're hitting for weakness, and there's plenty of stuff around like Reshiram and Charizard where you are hitting for weakness, this is easily enough. And I don't think it's ever going to not be enough. Like the biggest VMAX we've seen so far is Snorlax, and that's got 340. which means that any Pokemon coming along as a VMAX is probably going to have 340 or less, so by the time you're hitting them for weakness, doing 340, you'll be absolutely fine. So you're pretty golden when it comes to the whole damage. In terms of non-GXs, it's going to take something a little bit over the top bulky like Copperaja to survive a hit from this, so you're probably getting any single prize Pokemon. As for Pokemon V, you'll get the weakest ones like Morpeko. And with GXs, you'll get the weakest ones like the Dene. Those little rodents generally aren't the hardiest of creatures. But outside of that, you're not getting very many. We're in a weird format at the moment, where you kind of need to be hitting about 220 to reliably get one-hit KOs. And outside of that, there's not a huge difference between like 120, 130 and 170, 180. You're in two-hit KO range. Most of the time here, you're one hitting single prize Pokemon and two hitting 2 or 3 prize Pokemon. And you are two hitting them reliably. The thing we need to remember is that because you're a water single prize Pokemon that's an evolution, you've got tricks that make you a little bit more consistent, a little bit easier to use. I've already mentioned Frostmoth that lets you attach as much water energy as you like when you're on the bench. But being a non-GX, non-V Pokemon, you've also got access to Twin Energy. 2 colorless energy. Being an evolved Pokemon, you've also got access to Triple Acceleration Energy. 3 colorless energy, but it does fall off at the end of your turn, so you need to be a little bit careful about that, shall we say. And all of a sudden, you might need 4 energy, but we've got so many options for paying those 4 energy that it's actually not a huge deal. And now we're just hitting 170. And of course, it might not be 170. Because if you use the first attack and start spreading some damage around, especially if you start pulling out them Roxy tricks we mentioned, all of a sudden that 170 becomes 180, 190, 200, etc. If you hit them with a Blizzard and then a Crushed Ice Head, that's up to 250 plus whatever you might have hit them with when they were on the bench, and now you're getting a majority of things. But you've still got stuff like Mewtwo and Mew coming in at 270 damage. You're 2-hit KOing like you would be if you did 140. If you're hitting for weakness, or it's a single prize Pokemon, you're doing plenty of damage and life is good. But against the multiple prize Pokemon where you're not hitting for weakness, I'm afraid we do run the risk here of just being a little bit underpowered. Like to be wrong, but that's, I think, where we are with Galarian Darmanitan. Love the HP, like the amount of damage we can do, love the water typing, the weakness you're hitting, etc. But is it really doing enough damage? And I'm not sure that I can in good conscience say that it is. Is it better than Ice-Cube? Yes, as an attacker. But Ice-Cube's got that ability to reduce his damage done to it by 60. So maybe Ice-Cube becomes a better Pokemon, especially since it's actually more durable. And the first attack, you're giving up 10 damage to the active, but you're also a basic Pokemon. Ice-Cube doesn't have the other big attack, but maybe it doesn't need the other big attack. Either way, we've finally got a Galarian Darmanitan. That makes me happy, but I think I'm going to have to give it between 2 and 3 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. Not a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. Not a useless card, and not a card I'd be surprised to see popping up in decks. But a card where on the face of it, it seems like a very ordinary card. What is it that this Galarian Darmanitan does really well that other cards around don't? And I'm not sure we've got a satisfactory answer to that question. But right now, I'd like to know what you think. I'd like to know how good you think it is, and I'd like to know what you would play it with and what partners you'd choose. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, well, you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WazzyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.